Mannix, a student who took this class like you last year, made a wonderful video to help you with your first task. So after the course, he liked the effective altruism directions, and he did his thesis the second semester. So then he could choose after the course who he wants to do thesis. So he came to me and said, "Can we do something on effective altruism?" And I thought, terrific. Yes, I would love to do that. I would love to do as much as possible to leverage psychological science, judgment decision-making, social psychology to understand a little bit more about effectiveness. It was a very well done thesis that was conducted as a registered report, which means that the pre-registration plan was sent to expert peer review as part of a journal, a community. And they gave him a lot of amazing feedback. And finally, before the data collection, this was accepted for publication. So whatever the results were, it was going to be published. So I'll share a little bit of these very interesting findings that he had in order to try and support you for your first project. Everything we're going to do today is aimed at kind of giving you the skills necessary in order for you to do well on that task. Before we begin, any questions about the things going on in the course?
Oh, I actually have a question about Mannix's thesis.
Yes.
How did you guys get in touch with the original authors of the paper?
In this case, it's very easy because John Barron, although he's retired, he's still very, very active. He's actually the editor of the journal Judgment and Decision Making. He's very active. We've had a lot of back and forth. He does not like what I do with students, but he's very supportive of open science. He just thinks that this is a waste. He likes novel stuff. So he says, "Why are you revisiting? Like, I know that my stuff works." Unlike many others, he does share all of his materials, the data, and the code. So within 2 hours of emailing him, he just like sent us everything. He's very old school. So I think he was one of the first people to ever use R. Before there was R Studio and before there was R Markdown, he was just like punching the code. So stuff just reproduces very, very well. So he made it very, very easy for us. So we actually have all of his materials, and all of his materials are posted on his very old school website, publicly shared. So John Barron is just terrific this way. He's been the editor for a very long time. He's about to retire. He did the entire journal by himself, like coded the whole things, did the PDFs, managed this for, I don't know, 30 years. And then last year he became a bit tired and needed to hand things over. So somehow judgment decision making, from being diamond open access and done by the community for the community, we just handed everything over to Cambridge Press, which is a little bit sad. But he does just amazing work. We've done many replications of Barron. Almost, I think everything that we did with Barron replicated very well. So I'm just like, Barron's work, good stuff, really good stuff. And I think there is something to be said about somebody who shares everything publicly. I just like high quality stuff. Also in this case, and this takes us to like this introduction, he has a way of taking very complex ideas and just simplifying them to the very core basics, so that you know, today in the giving game, we're going to have like 7 different charities from very different domains. It's like, where should we donate to? So he just tries to take this very complex thing and just narrows it down to deviating on a single factor. So we have 2 charities, they're exactly the same, but there's this one factor. How would this affect your decision? So on the thesis, if you've read it, there's like, we ran 4 different sections. So in Barron, in the original one, was 4 different studies. We ran this together, randomized order. It's like many, many different factors, one after the other. So we replicated 5 main factors, and then Mannix added 2 more. Yeah. So good question. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Any other questions before I begin? All right. So talking about Mannix's thesis, to hide this, yeah. Yeah, so from the course syllabus, if we go to that, you'll see that you have Team Project 1, Designing Psychological Science Experiment, Leveraging Effective Altruism Insights. So you can see the original article, which was actually, it was a book chapter in a very interesting book about how psychological science can give us some insights about effective giving. And then we have Mannix's thesis here. You can even see like the reviews that we got from peer community. So that's the nice thing about having like a register report, and everything is very open and shared publicly. So you can see actually all the peer review and how we reply to the peer review. So if you want to learn a little bit about what it means to submit your thesis to a journal and get some feedback. So we've had some very good reviewers giving us some very insightful things. And finally, also the editor did a really good job at like challenging us to do better. And what's nice about this is that after this is accepted officially, we can automatically publish with one of these journals here, or we can get invitations from other journals. So last year, the thesis students that work with me chose to publish with Collabora Psychology, which is also like a nice open access journal that is doing very well. Yeah, so you can see that here, and then you can see Mannix's thesis. Yeah, over here. And if we keep going, I explain the design. So basically, Bayron did examined 5 different factors. How do people think about waste and overhead? How do they think about past cost? How do they think about diversification, in-group, and regulation? So I give this example over here. I'll try and make this even bigger. So for example, this one, participants read a description of 2 charities, which differed in only the relative amount of money spent on advertising or overhead. So for example, you have charity A and charity B. They both help prevent death in children. Both of them can help prevent 5 deaths for every $1,000 of donations. The only difference between these two, the only factor that differs between them, is that A spends $200 out of every 1,000 on donations on advertising, and B spends $100. And then we want to know, do people have any preference in this? If they don't have any preference, maybe I just will show you what that looks like. Yeah, so Mannix shared the way that he coded this on the Qualtrics. So you can see people can choose 100 for A or 0 for B, up to 50-50 to A and B. So they can choose the allocations in jumps of 10%, all the way to giving everything to B, right? So if people don't have a preference, if they don't care about this factor, they would say just 50-50. I don't really care. I don't have a preference if it's A or it's B. But if they really care about this factor, they will deviate from the 50-50 split either to A, if they have a preference for that, if they have a preference for one that spends more on advertising, or towards B, if they have a preference for that spends less money on advertising. Now, it's interesting because one of the things that we discussed in previous weeks is that people don't like their money, the charity money, going to advertising. It's like, why? I want to spend this on really solving an issue. I don't want you to use this in order to get more money from others. But we need to think about whether this makes sense or not, and how this is related to effectiveness. Because if you think about this for a second, beyond the gut intuition, actually what has happened is that charity A spent $800, and using the same $800 was able to save that number of deaths, right? So in order to prevent 5 deaths, they spent $800. The other charity needed to spend $900 to prevent the same number of deaths. So it could be that next year they won't need any marketing, but actually A is the more effective one. So sometimes we have this gut intuition saying, oh, marketing, we hate marketing. But if you look at what's rest from the marketing, then you'll see that actually they might differ on the actual effectiveness of what they do with that money. We also have this aversion for overhead and management. We don't want to pay bureaucracy. But it could be that a bureaucracy just functions much better. It's better on transparency. Therefore, it could be that it's more effective. So is the overhead really the factor that you want to focus on? So here we don't judge. We don't try to say, okay, this is more effective, this is less effective. Here we just want to understand how people think. All right, so what you can see here, so this is the distribution. I hope you can see a little bit of that. So what we can, I'll do this a little bit closer. So you can see it's a little bit blurry, but what you can see here is that we have 0 to B, 10% to B, 20% to B, up to 50% to B, and all the way over to 100% to B. So it seems like most people really care about this marketing factor, and they want to donate to the charity that spends less on marketing. How do we do this statistically? Statistically, we do what's called a very, very simple test. Of all the tests that you can run on Jamovi and Python and R, this is the simplest one. It's called a one sample t-test. So basically, there's no manipulation. There's no between subject design. There's no within subject design. There's just one sample with one decision between A and B. And what you do is you compare your mean to the 50-50 split, to exactly the middle. So if there would be no preference, the mean would be here somewhere in the middle. But actually, the mean is to the right of it. It's somewhere around the 70 plus, right? And then we want to do a statistical test. Is a 70 plus mean meaningfully different than the 50-50 split? And what we can see here on the top, I don't know if you can, how much you can see. Oh, this is a little bit blurry, but the p-value is very, very, very low. So this is a relatively strong effect. How effect? When we look at Hedges G or Cohen's D, the effect is 0.84. So 0.84 is considered to be a strong effect, especially in social psychology, right? So this is already a very interesting insight. Then later we can have a debate on whether this makes sense or not. Focusing on marketing, how is this related to effectiveness? We did also diversification, so all these were replications, but then Mannix added an extension. And this is a little bit like the extension that I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to come up with between 10 and 20 extensions, the strongest ones that you can think about. So today when we do the giving game, when you listen to your classmates, when we try to decide which charity, try and think, what are these factors that people care about? What might be the strongest one? So basically, you'll give me like the strongest things that you can think about in your team. They will compete against the strongest ones from the other teams. I will run this together as an experiment with real participants in order to see what the insights, the most impactful insights are. I will give you this data and I will ask you to analyze this. I will give you the code, I will give you the Jamovi and the R. Don't worry about how to run this, but you will get your own data in order to really see whether your predictions of which one are going to be the strongest really hold up and how you compare to the others, to the other teams. Then the second task, after we finish this task, is for you to take these strongest ones and to build a charity from that. There are some psychologists that have done this before you. One great example, which I linked to in the second task, is called Giving Multiplier. They found amazing things. They built their own charity. This is a PhD student that started this whole thing, and they've already had a lot of money gained in order to give to charity, over 20 million, I think. An amazing thing that came out from this kind of research, okay? So once we understand how people think about this, we can do something about this in order to help them increase effectiveness, okay? So here in this example, this was against our predictions. So I asked Mannix, what do you think will happen this? He gave a prediction, I agreed with this. This is what we pre-registered, but something completely different happened. What happened here? Here we have two charities, A and B. A publishes the names of donors and how much they donated on a website, and B keeps donors anonymous. We thought that many people would donate because they want their names in public associated with them being good people. To our great surprise, when we asked which one would you prefer, most of them went with B, keeping donors anonymous. So many people would choose the charity that would not share their details and would not say how much they donated. Why is this happening? Is this the amount of money? Is this something else? What's keeping this? I don't know, but it's already against our predictions. So this is also something very humbling. We had a prediction. We thought people act a certain way. We tested, and then we find something completely different. So this is already wonderful. We hope to like keep building with this. At the same time that we found this, a big, large field experiment came out with very similar findings to this, that people actually preferred in real life to remain anonymous and not share their details. So it seems like some convergence there. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. Is this clear? Just before I move on? Yeah, all good? Okay. Give directly. Have you heard of this charity? No? Okay. Give directly is something revolutionary. Up until not too long ago, most people assumed that in order to do some good in the world, you need experts to go take the money, go to whoever needs that money or has some need, and to help them implement the change that they need. If they're hungry, let's help them get some food. If they need sanitation, let's help them build running water, toilets, whatever it is. So we come with our money, with our expertise. We go to developing countries, we go to the suffering, those in need, and then we use everything that we have, both the money and the knowledge, in order to help them build solutions. Give directly said, this is the wrong intuition. Why? Because we come with a lot of bias. We don't know what they need. Everything here in Hong Kong is so nice. Everything is just laid out. We have a lot of things that just work really, really well. So when we go over there, we have our assumptions of what it is that they need, but it could be very different. It could be that we're wrong. It could be that they don't want to tell us because we're this colonial, white-looking people or Asian-looking people coming to tell them what it is that they actually need in order to do their job, improve their lives, in order to raise the community. So instead, what they said is, we're going to send the money directly to them. So most of them have mobiles, maybe not like ours, maybe not smartphones, but they do have banking abilities in order to have some cash. And we send this directly to their mobiles, and we don't tell them how to use this. We just let them have the money. And our assumption is they know best what it is that they need in order to survive, in order to do better, in order to build whatever infrastructure they need long-term, right? So this is revolutionary. It helps address many of the biases. And what's nice about Give Directly, built by economists that did randomized controlled trials, and most of the randomized controlled trials have shown Give Directly does a lot better than many of the things that we did before trying to help people. Another thing that Give Directly does very well, it has no overhead. If you just send the money to them, you don't need managers, you don't need bureaucracy. Money comes in from donors, it goes directly to where it's needed. Another possible thing that helps this whole thing is that you know exactly where your money is going. Not some bureaucrat is saying, okay, go to this, go to that. You can see who you've helped. The person who is helped can see where the money came from, right? So if you don't want to be anonymous, if you want to know how your money is being used, if you want to share your details so that somebody will know that you've helped them, Give Directly allows you to do these kinds of things. So based on real evidence, randomized controlled trial, this seems to be the benchmark in effective altruism movement. So we say, people in the field, people who are in need, they know what they need, therefore give them cash. Anytime in effective altruism, we want to build a charity and show that charity is effective, we compare this to Give Directly. We need to show that the new charity does better than just giving them cash. You think you're helping them? Just compare this to giving them cash, okay? So when we run randomized controlled trials, we do Give Directly against all the others. And then we see, are we really able to improve this better than them just improving on their own with cash? Yeah? A revolution in thinking. So I'll give you an example for two kinds of charities. One that is considered very, very impactful, a lot better than just giving cash, and one is that it's considered to be a complete failure. Just before I do that, if we try to take this Give Directly charity, and we try to build an experiment from that using Mannix's thesis, we want to do an extension. So let's try and take the Give Directly idea and then pivot this with two charities that are exactly the same, doing exactly the same things and only vary in one factor. What kind of charities can you think of? What kind of one factor can we do from the give directly idea in order to do the experimental design for Mannix's thesis? I'll give you an example. You think about it, and then give me yours. So this is what I wrote. If we try to look at the same kind of coding, charity A sends money to those in need, and money can only be used for expenses that the charity pre-decided on being highest priority on average. So we have this think tank. This think tank decides how the money should be used, and if you give money to people, they need to prove that they've used it for that. Let's say food. They need food the most. Rice is the most efficient one, therefore they need to show us with receipts that they've used this on rice, on food. Charity B sends money to those in need, and money can be used in any way that the receiver sees fit. Do you understand the idea? They're exactly the same, they deviate on one factor. What other kind of contrast can we do? Just based on the give directly idea?
Overhead costs, bureaucracy.
Overhead costs, okay, good. So let's do two charities. We have charity A, charity B. Let's describe them. Charity A.
That's the benchmark of give directly, just like give them money.
Okay, yeah, so charity A just gives money directly, so a little bit like charity B here. Okay, what is the other charity?
Also give them money, but then some part of it is given to the managers, people, other
Yeah.
people, not exactly the.
Right, there's a mediator, some bureaucrat, an overhead kind of managing corporation that needs to go through that before it goes to the actual target. Something like that, yeah? Okay, good. Any other ideas? Something similar? One last one before we proceed. What other things? So we have overhead, we have about empowerment, about the ability to choose your own thing. What else? Do we decide, so is there somebody like in the middle that makes the decision of who the money should be assigned to? So maybe somebody who knows the field better or knows the people better and can evaluate them in some kind of way, right? So is this just like everybody that signs up to give directly can get money directly from them if they show they need, or there's somebody in the field that knows the people that can assign the money to them? Yeah, very good. So I have charity A, charity B. So most of the exercises today, once I show you the different charities from effective altruism, the first stage that you will have in your giving game is to try and think of these factors. Charity A, charity B, exactly the same, differ on one factor. Okay. Factor could be, are they empowered to make their own decisions of how to spend the money? It could be, is there an overhead, some bureaucracy that manages the whole thing? Or it could be, is there a decision maker who says who will get the money in the field, right? Good. So think about these kinds of directions. Okay. In your task, in your project, question is, how do I know anything about effective altruism? I don't have the time, and I don't have the energy, the effort to go and invest and learn stuff about effective altruism. So I want to say that Mannix and all the students that took this class before you, these amazing resources in order to help us summarize effective altruism. They did 2 books in order to help you with your task. So you can see, yeah. Here we have a section. It says examples for directions that have not been tested yet. So last year's effective altruism book and last year's comparing charities collaborative book. So we have this book over here. Yeah. So what you can see is that we have different domains. So for example, charities that have to do with how to maximize your career, how to use your career in order to do some good in the world, or how to promote animal welfare. So one of the charities that you'll think about today does not focus on human, it focuses on trying to help animals as much as possible. Another charity domain is climate change. Another charity domain is existential threats like AI or technologies. Long-term views instead of short-term views, long-term views. There's some charities that focus on longer visions, global poverty, health, yeah, AI, emerging technologies. And then finally, and this is the most important chapter, is the one that focuses on how do we evaluate charity and impact. So in each one of those, You can see kind of like all sorts of obstacles. How do I understand charitable giving? All sorts of objectives, some texts if you want more articles on this, and then finally an effectiveness assessment. This is the first collaborative book that you can learn from in order to think about different factors that might be important. Another one is this book. It's Understanding and Improving Methodologies for Evaluating and Comparing Charities. Yeah, so what we did here is that actually the whole concept of effective altruism got a lot of boost when GiveWell came into being. So I don't know if you've heard about GiveWell, but this is about hedge fund managers that came across a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars they made from all sorts of investments, and they wanted to do some good in the world. They say, we have enough, we just want to donate all of this. So what they did is that they were going to compare all of the charities. They started doing phone calls. Okay, Red Cross, okay, Save the Child. Can you tell me, how are you going to spend the $1 million that I'm going to send you? And what they realized is that they have no way of knowing how the money is going to be used. So they founded GiveWell. And the only point at the beginning for GiveWell was to try and rank effectiveness of charities. First, to try and get them to share as much as possible, transparency. So prompting them, can you give me information? Can you give me some statistics? I want a scientific understanding of how much good you can do. Another thing is just to evaluate what good is, because there's so many different things in doing good. It's poverty, health, existential risk, long-term, and all these other things that come into play. How do you measure these against each other? So they have something called moral weights where they can say per dollar spent, this is how much you're doing in this charity. And they really break this down. It's mind-blowing to see this methodology. So the second task that they have, Mannix and the students from last year, what I asked them to do is go and study how GiveWell does the methodology. They share everything transparently. Every year when they evaluate charities, they explain, this is what we do, this is how we evaluate them, this is how we know that this charity does the best. Okay? Then, one amazing thing that GiveWell does is that every year, I think it's twice a year, they invite you to attack their methodology. If you disagree, they will want your feedback. They will pay you for this feedback. Any submission, as long as it's articulate, as long as it's full and has a good argument, will give you $500 for participation because they want your feedback. If you do well, the top 3 are like $20,000 US. So the top ones, you will get cash money for helping them improve. And in the follow-up report, they will include and address your feedback in order to help them do better. So they really care about effectiveness. They really care about including everybody. Maybe they have an oversight. Maybe they have a Western mindset, and then we can come here and say we have something new. Maybe we focus on this kind of utilitarian morality, but they care about the ontologists. So we can have this kind of debate. They want the feedback. They invite this. They pay for this. They award you for this. So I wanted to encourage the students from last year to submit to GiveWell. So this is the second book. I actually asked them first evaluate what GiveWell is doing, and then attack their methodology based on psychological science. So find articles that will give us some insight, like Bayron or Mannix's thesis, and then based on that, submit something to GiveWell so that you can get first the cash reward, but also help GiveWell do better. So all sorts of questions that they needed to do. How is GiveWell measuring and evaluating charities? So what is the methodology? What is it that they do? So in this case, it's the effectiveness of careers. What is the scientific evidence behind this? What are the strengths and what are the limitations? And then finally, the part 3 is about improving their methodology. So there are a lot of factors here about how to evaluate charities, how to make sure that different charities from different domains can be compared to one another. So it's about comparing how to do good using the GiveWell methodology, first to learn what they've done and then to improve on it. So if you want to see the amazing stuff that the students did last year from the different domains, animal welfare, climate change, and so forth, you're welcome to go in and use these resources. So we'll have a setup, giving game. I will show you in a second what that looks like. First, I want to introduce you to Giving What We Can. So this is Luke. He's the coordinator of the Giving Games. And Giving What We Can has this amazing thing where they encourage people to do a giving game. So they've allocated $10 US to each and every one of you that you can decide which charity you want to donate this to. So they are a charity that tries to help us think about how we want to donate to charities, okay? So I contacted Luke. This is already the second year that we do this. So this is kind of like the email that I wrote him. I'll be running the same thing like similar to last year. And I made some adjustments and I showed him our syllabus and I said, can we please have your support? There's about, I don't know, 70 students overall. And then Luke said, yeah, great. Glad to see that you're running this again. It's approved. Whatever you will tell me at the end of your sessions, just give me the report. I will show you what the report looks like. You will need to help me write this report. Tell me what the tally is of how much is, how many students donated to the $10 US to each charity, and I will make this donation in your name and we'll get like a nice certificate and a receipt, and I'll share this back with you. So it's amazing that Giving What We Can does this in order to help us do some good in the world while we're learning about how to leverage psychological science for effective altruism. All right, so we talked about Give Directly. I want to give you two different examples in contrast to Give Directly. So Give Directly is kind of like the benchmark. We compare everything against Give Directly. One of the highest impact charities is this one, Against Malaria Foundation. For very, very cheap, you can buy a bed net that would protect you against mosquitoes that in developing countries carry malaria. And a lot of people, many kids, die from malaria every year. It's very simple that sometimes just having a mosquito net can prevent you contracting malaria. So if you remember from last week, we had Dollar Street, Bill Gates introducing how people in different places live, what their houses look like. And you can see that if you go like under $2, it's pretty basic, right? All you really have, sometimes you're out there in the farm, in the field, in the desert, you have no protection, there are no walls. Sometimes all you have is a bed net, right? So sometimes with $2 per bed net, you can protect people for 3 years against mosquitoes and malaria. So this is considered to be a very high effectiveness, almost 100 times better than other kinds of investments, other kinds of charities. So almost every year, Against Malaria Foundation gets a lot of funding from GiveWell. So GiveWell ranks them, gives a report, gives to everybody. You can donate to GiveWell top charities, and they will just transfer all of this to charities like Against Malaria Foundation. Play pumps, have you heard of this? No? Right. So some charities, this was a very popular idea. A lot of people behind this, the World Bank invested in this. We thought we want to solve two problems with one solution. What is the big problem in developing country? A big problem is having water for drinking. It's very, very difficult to find this. Sometimes it's very, very deep in the ground and you need to pump it up to bring this up to the people. So sometimes it's this very manual, pump. Sometimes if it's very, very deep, it's going to be very, very difficult, very, very tiring to do this. So this is one need that they had. Another need is that they don't have a lot of entertainment, not a lot of things going on over there. So not much that they could do. So we can offer them some entertainment. We can have their kids playing around with a playground. We take playgrounds for granted, somewhere to take our kids. They don't have this in developing countries. So we thought, no problem, let's combine these two together. We'll do this merry-go-round, what do you call this? Something that just like goes around. Children play with this, they push each other. As they push each other, water is being pumped from the ground. Great idea, right? What can go wrong? What do you think happened? Big failure, big failure. First, Do they really want this? Did somebody ask them? So we like to go around in circles, maybe, I don't know, for 2 minutes, and then we just don't want to do this anymore as kids, you know. It's like, how long can this go? So at the beginning, it was great. We had these amazing photos. We can post this on the World Bank website. But then after a while, when we came back to see, are they using this? It seems like the kids really did not pick it up. It was just left there deserted. And what eventually ended happening is that the elderly were sent every day to push this thing at the end of the day so that they'll have enough water in order to drink. Right? So this was not how we imagined this sort of thing. So sometimes you really don't know whether you're helping them or you're actually creating a situation that would really backfire. This is really one of these case studies that backfired. So was a recipient of a lot of money, a Clinton Global Initiative, millions of dollars, but it's less efficient than hand pumps. It's really not fun to play with, and it ended up being discarded or, you know, feeling a little bit like slavery, forced slavery on them in order to be able to pump some water. And it could have been just a simple solution. I don't know if you've ever seen pumps, but nowadays you've got pumps that work on solar panels, can just like, you don't even need any investment. There's no maintenance needed. You know, once every 5 years, you come and check everything is okay. You've got like running water the whole time without this manual labor of forcing people to go around. If you really want to help them with kids, you just ask them, what is it that you need? How do your kids want to play? And then maybe you can help in that domain with a different charity. But sometimes combining solutions together like this is not a good idea, okay? So we've got Give Directly, we've got Against Malaria Foundation being a lot more effective than that, and then we've got like disasters like this. So usually what we do is we run this randomized control trial to pivot them against each other to see, okay, so this part of the development country got this solution, this part got a different solution, and then we see how effective that was. In this case study, you don't even need a randomized control trial. It's just it was a disaster. Okay. Today, we're going to do the giving game on Give Directly versus 6 other charities. So you can choose which one of those 6 charities you want to donate to. So we've got Helen Keller International, we've got Center of Long-Term Risk, we have Wild Animal Initiative, the Clean Air Task Force, Carbon 180, and the New Incentive. I will just show you what this setup looks like. Yeah. I'll just go to the top. Yeah. So this is our document. So I will tell you about these charities. And at the beginning, you will make a gut reaction donation decision. So just based on the very little information that we have, I will ask you, how do you vote? Who would you donate your $10 to? Okay. Then we will try and use the scientist hat in order to make a discussion, an in-class discussion. You will work in teams of 6, and you will help debate this kind of thing in order to see whether we can improve effectiveness. Do we want to change from our gut reaction? Is there something that we're missing that maybe our classmate can think of? And structure the factors. What is the factor that we're thinking of? Aside from our gut reaction, if we sit down and think about it, how do we contrast these different charities? So this is what we're going to do. So the first stage, which we called stage 0, is voting. You will first write your names and your student ideas, and then your first charity of choice. These are the descriptions. It's under stage 0, the descriptions of all the different charities that you can choose from. So you've got 6 different ones, and then Give Directly. Then we have planning. You'll have about 20 minutes in order to plan this out. And what I want you to do during this planning stage is to write down as many of the possible factors that come to mind when you look at these charities. And then, just like in the Mannix thesis, I will ask you to try and make a contrast. If you remember, we talked about Give Directly, and then we had 3 different ideas of how to contrast charity A, hypothetical charity A, and hypothetical charity B. So you will see here, hypothetical charity A, hypothetical charity B, and what the factor is. So I already included as an example what I showed you to you from GiveWell. So example from class, empowering agency trust in direct cash transfers. So charity A dictates purpose and use of money, and charity B lets receivers decide on how to use the funds. So the first 20 minutes, just write down together as a group, as a team, as many factors as possible, and the contrast between the two charities that are exactly the same, aside from one factor. This is basically what you will do in your first project, okay? So we'll have 20 minutes of that. After we have that, you will have a discussion. So we will be in groups of 6. And in order to make sure that there's a discussion, that everybody is included, that everything is being documented, I need 2 roles in each team. Some people like to facilitate, some people like to observe and document. So you can decide who in the team wants to do what. So we have 1 facilitator monitor. So this means that the goal is to encourage the team members. I will make this a little bit bigger. Encourage the team members to discuss as many factors about comparing charities. So the monitor, the facilitator, really helps the team make sure that they're on track. The monitor facilitator does not participate. He or she does not share their own opinions. The only role is to help the other 4 to have a good discussion about this. If there's something that's not clear, the facilitator then asks, can you please clarify what you mean by that? Okay? If somebody is not included, we want everybody to be heard. You invite them to, please, can you share your opinion as well? Okay? So very important role to be a facilitator, not to share your own views, but to make sure that the others are being heard. Okay? So only ask questions, raises questions to clarify what the other team members do, does not participate. And if there's if you get stuck, if you see that you're spending too much time on a certain factor, just move on. So the main point is just to monitor, to make sure that the team is doing well in discussing this kind of thing. The second role is an observer. The observer needs to help the team document everything. We're not going to use laptops in this stage. Everybody should be engaging with each other. The only person using the laptop is the observer. Does not participate, only observe, and documents what everybody is saying, so that afterwards, the team can go back to this and see everything that was discussed. So instead of everybody worrying about the laptop and contribution and what is happening and all that, everybody is just focused on discussion, and the only one that's dealing with documentation is the observer. Does not participate in the team discussion. Is it clear, the 2 roles? Yeah? Is it clear, the stages? So we have the stage 1 where everybody discusses the factors. We have stage 2 of a discussion where we have facilitator, observer, and 4 members that make the discussion. And finally, afterwards, we have stage 3 about you just voting again. So has something changed in the discussion that made you change your mind, that made you reconsider, that made you see things a different way? So you will go back to the first table, and next to the stage 0, you have stage 3. You will make your final decision. So I will look at that column in order to make the decision to say in your name which charities we want to donate to as a class. So you can decide whatever charity you pick. I will say, okay, $10 goes to that. Okay, is that clear? Yeah. Okay. What are these charities that we are considering? What are these 6 charities? They're very, very different from each other. We don't have a lot of information. We're not going to Google them. We're not going to look into them in great detail. If you want, you can take it from the slides, or in the second page, you have this brief decision. Many times when we make the decisions to donate, we don't look things up. So here I'm just asking you, based on this description, what does your gut intuition tell you? And what differentiates between these? Okay. So these are the different charities. One is Helen Keller International. Why Helen Keller? Blindness. Okay. So this is what it's about. Vitamin A deficiency. We don't think about this in Hong Kong because we don't have a problem with vitamin A. We have plenty of it, but developing countries have a real issue of getting enough vitamin A. What's the problem with not having enough vitamin A? Is that it can cause all sorts of horrible things, from little things like dry eyes all the way to blindness, which sometimes can cause all sorts of things like even death. So sometimes you don't think about something as simple as having vitamins, go to the field, go to developing countries, giving them vitamin A pills can really help solve all sorts of things like blindness and deaths. So just giving this in sub-Saharan Africa to reduce the malnutrition and avert blindness and deaths, okay? Very interesting charity. Clean Air Task Force, completely different domain. So what are they doing? Identifying the best pathways to zero carbon energy system. We're facing climate change. This is an existential threat, something that is going to affect all of us. Somebody needs to do something about this, but we don't have enough minds working on this. Therefore, we have charities like this that invest a lot of money in order to get people to promote a zero carbon energy system. It also promotes all sorts of litigation about power cases in the US, climate through outreach and education, hosting symposium, technical seminars, workshops, and expert roundtables. You can see here from Founders Pledge, if you want later, you can press this link, why they recommend them. So Founders Pledge is a little bit like GiveWell, a little bit like Open Philanthropy. They're trying to promote charities that think about the big ideas, right? So they have all sorts of reasons about, for example, this is our top pick in climate change because they combined high quality research on climate policy. They demonstrated the ability to achieve major policy change on a small budget. So they're very, very effective. Per dollar spent, it seems that they have a lot of impact in the domain of climate change. So Helen Keller, more health, poverty related. And then we've got Clean Air, something completely on a different scale, right? How to compare? Center on long-term risk. What do they do? Addressing the worst case risk from the development and deployment of advanced AI systems. Some people 3-4 years ago thought, are you crazy? Like what can AI do? I think now this year, after ChatGPT 4 and all the things that keep coming up, I think people are much more aware that AI could be a real issue. So some charities are trying to think about what are the biggest risks and then addressing them. So what are they doing? They focus on the reduction of extreme suffering through AI, producing academic research, making and recommending grants, building a community of professionals and other researchers through events, fellowships, and individual support. So we don't really know how to approach AI. It's something that seems like it might be risky, but we still don't know if it's risky. So we need the best minds there in order to debate this. So Center on Long-Term Risk tries to approach these kinds of things to help prevent them from becoming a global catastrophe and a risk for all of us, okay? Very different charity, completely different domain, something else. Wild Animal Initiative. Many of these focus on people, but this one focuses on animals. What cause are they working on? Understanding and improving the lives of wild animals, working to create the academic field of wild animal welfare. It seems like we don't do enough academic research on this. Drawing from disciplines such as ethics, ecology, animal welfare science, producing academic research, literature reviews, and op-eds, working with researchers and running an annual conference. So within the effective altruism, GiveWell, Open Philanthropy, Founders Pledge, it's considered to be a highly efficient, effective charity because it's one of the only charities in the world focused on reducing suffering of wild animals by considering the needs of individual animals. Because everybody is focused on humans, sometimes we neglect a certain aspect like animals. So sometimes we need to focus on something that has been neglected. So this allows that charity to do some good in that domain. So they give some examples about, there's a certain amount of humans, but there are many, many more animals on a much larger scale. So they try to think about how to address all of them. Carbon 180 also tries to address climate change, but on a different perspective. Rather than reducing carbon emissions, what they're trying to say is that we already have carbon. Now we need to capture it, right? If we just do one side, it's not going to be enough. We need to address also the carbon that is already out there. So they're trying to capture as much as possible, but the technology is still very, very young. So champions a broad range of carbon removal solutions, designing and advancing policies that help catalyze innovation and deployment. So it does research, it does policy development, and it does all sorts of things in order to drive innovation. Okay, and then here from the life you can save, you can see carbon 180 is considered to be very effective in what it does because it has proven results, has collaborative approach, and it's very, very cost effective. So per dollar spent, it seems to be doing very good in addressing that domain. Okay, another very different thing. Finally, the last one, new incentives, which is a very, very interesting idea. The idea is, let's give people cash, but let's give people cash as a reward for something that we want to promote. They were thinking the one thing that we want to promote, the one thing that we know in science really works is what? Vaccinations. We don't have vaccinations. Why are people not getting vaccinated? Sometimes it's not about access to vaccinations. So what new incentive says is we're going to give caregivers, the parents, money if they can show that they've vaccinated their kids against something. Okay, so it is about giving them cash. They can decide whatever they want to do with it, but it's giving them cash after they've proven they've done something that we know is highly effective in addressing a health problem. Vaccinating kids, therefore saving lives of these kids. Is that clear? Very different domain. Okay, how to compare these? Very, very complicated. So we need to discuss this. We need to think about what are the factors? How do we simplify this? Who do we want to help? Why? We need to debate these kinds of things, okay? So we'll have a 5-minute break. When we come back, we'll go into circles, different parts of the room, and then we'll start debating this, okay? 5 minutes, come back, and then separate into different parts. 6 in a team, okay? Yeah, good. So start by opening this link and doing your initial gut reaction vote, stage 0 vote. Put your name and your vote and maybe a reason for why you chose that. Good, so the first task that you have after you've done your vote, go to stage 1 and then see how you can come up with as many factors as possible contrasting the different charities, hypothetical charities, okay? This is a good time to discuss what are the factors that we can do in order to compare these different charities and how can we simplify this into something that's just one factor. Okay, good. I hope you all voted. Time for you to move to the stage 1. See the table. Look at the factors. Look at the contrast between hypothetical charity A, hypothetical charity B, and try to come up with as many that would allow you to think about the problem of how to compare charities. Okay, sorry to stop you for a second. You've done very well. Very interesting to go around and listen to your conversations, and I saw the kind of factors that you're putting in. Good job. I think it's ready for you to move on to the next stage. So I'm going to ask for you to identify 2 roles, the facilitator and the observer, and everybody else, it's time to put aside your laptops. Only the observer writes everything down and focus on the discussion. The facilitator helps everybody to address the question of, okay, we know all these factors. Now we need to make a decision. How to make this decision? So focus on the different factors. Don't overthink this. Don't over debate this. Facilitator makes sure everybody is included and that every factor is addressed, okay? Just your attention. Sorry to interrupt you. Love the energy and the engagement. Seems like you're really into it and that you're learning new things. Some hot debates in different groups. Hold on. Let's stop for a second. So you've had a chance to think about this problem. It's not easy. Usually, when we have some money and we want to do some good in the world, we think everything is very straightforward, but then we see other options. Maybe at the beginning, we only saw Red Cross, Save the Child, but now we know there's lots of charities and they come from very, very different domains. How to start even comparing all these things? We can. The way to do this is to have a discussion, to make transparent everything that goes into our equation. What did we think about? What are the factors? How to simplify this as much as possible so that we can articulate to other people what it is that we think and how we can get information from them to maybe expand our mindset and make a more informed, better decision, right? So you've had a lot of opinions, different people around you, hearing from them what it is that they care about. You've raised all sorts of factors that maybe you've not considered before. So this is what we aim to do in this course. This is what the first project is about. This is just to give you a taste of the process, maybe to get you started of thinking more about altruism, how to make charitable donations, what kind of factors go into this, what is the psyche, the psychological science behind this. Advanced social psychology, psychological science can inform all of that. We can test these things. We can try and understand ourselves. We can help others to do better in increasing effectiveness. So it's time to vote. This is the final vote. Open your laptops, go to the first table, and on the right column, write your final decision and the reason. Give you 5 minutes, and then we'll just do one final wrap up. Okay, just so we have like an understanding, just by show of hands, I'm curious, how many of you have changed your opinion from the gut instinct to the final vote? Raise your hand, please. Many of you, some of you. Just so we make sure, how many of you have stayed with the same decision since the beginning? Okay, so it's about half-half. About half-half. Very interesting to see that. I'm looking forward to seeing your Google Docs. More interesting activities to come up. For now, I just want to say thank you for taking part in the giving game. Based on your decisions, I will transfer all of this to Luke, and I will produce the certificate and the receipt for you to see this in your name. Thank you. I'll see you next week.